You ever watch a disaster coming straight at you in slow motion, like you're standing there, helpless, knowing what's about to hit, but nobody else seems to get it? That's what it felt like the night. The hillside gave way. I mean, you think you're prepared for this stuff, but when the land beneath your feet decides it's had enough, there's nothing, that feels more powerless. I saw the ground ripple, a whole chunk of the ridge just collapsing with this roar so deep and angry it rattled in my bones. And when the dust finally settled, those 3 fancy cabins Karen Livingston kept bragging about gone, buried under a mess of mud and broken dreams. And Karen herself? She was just standing there at the edge, screaming at the ruins, clipboard clutched in a death grip like it could save her now. Yeah, that happened. Name's Daniel Whitaker. Chestnut Ridge is all I've ever known. After 2 decades in the Army Corps, building levees, stabilizing hillsides from Maine to Arizona, I figured I'd finally carved out a little piece for myself. My land sits right at the bottom of that ridge, green and quiet, a creek running by, pine trees that catch the sun just right in the mornings. It used to feel like a piece of the world nobody else remembered, until Karen moved in. You ever meet someone who just has that, trust me, I know best energy? That's her. The pressed linen shirts, the always-on sunglasses, that voice pitched just loud enough so you know she means business. Within months, she was running the HOA like it was her personal fiefdom. She turned neighborly chats into citations, recommendations into bylaws, and started handing out fines like she was Oprah giving away cars. You get a fine. And you get a fine. Painted your mailbox the wrong brown. Ticket. Grass an inch too high. Warning letter. I just kept my head down, paid my dues, and watched the circus from my porch. Figured she'd get bored, maybe chase another HOA somewhere else. Then one morning, I wake up to the sound of engines, big ones, grinding right up the ridge. I step outside and there they are, excavators clawing into the hillside. My hillside. I stomp up. There, boots sinking in loose sand, heart hammering. And there's Karen, yelling at a bunch of contractors. Take it down 6 more feet, she tells them, waving that clipboard like it's a sword. I call her out, right there. Hey, that's my property line you're chewing up. She just smiles, all condescending, tells me the board approved it, says the land's been rezoned for shared development. Drainage improvement, luxury cabins, all that nonsense. You'll thank us later, she says, like she's gifting me something. I swear, I could feel my jaw pop. I was clenching so hard. I go home, dig out every deed and survey I've got. The line's as clear as daylight. They're not just close, they're on my land. So I take it to the next HOA meeting, spread it all out, nice and calm. Karen's at the head of the table, her little army of yes men lined up beside her. She glances at my paperwork like I just handed her a grocery list. Boundaries have shifted, she says. New development plans. I can feel my ears burning. She leans back, tells me I'm welcome to hire legal counsel, but the project's going ahead no matter what. Any interference, and she'll file a complaint for obstruction. Next day, a $250 landscaping fine appears taped to my door. Real mature, right? I just shake my head and keep watching as the machines dig deeper, taking chunks of the ridge with every pass. I take pictures, videos, timestamps, the whole 9 yards. But what good's evidence when the folks in charge are the ones breaking the rules? More fines show up, unauthorized. Slope modification, $600. They're destroying the hill, but I'm the one getting punished. The irony stings, but what can you do? You start wondering if you're the crazy one. One night, I'm sitting in my study, surrounded by maps and deeds, the desk lamp throwing these long, tired shadows. For a split second, I think, maybe I should just pay up and move on. What am I fighting for? Then I hear this faint clinking outside. Rachel's wind chime, my late wife's favorite thing. She always said the land was part of us, that it held us together. That's when I knew I couldn't just let it go. It was about respect. For the land, for her memory, for myself. So I call in Hank, an old friend from the Corps, one of those guys who can tell you a hillside's mood just by looking at it. He walks the ridge, shakes his head, says, Dan, they're cutting into the foundation. One good rain, and this whole thing could come down. That stuck with me, one good rain. I send his report to the HOA. What do I get back? Another fine. Unauthorized consultation for $100. You almost have to laugh. A few days later, I catch a break. There's this young contractor, maybe 20, forgets a folder on his truck. Wind flips it open. Inside are 2 soil reports, same date, same engineer. The real one says the risk of slope failure is high, but the copy they submitted says low. Classic switcheroo. I snap photos, copy everything. That night, I line it all up. Emails, reports, fines, permits. A whole paper trail showing exactly what they've been doing. Then the rain comes. Starts as a drizzle. Nothing special. But it doesn't stop. Day 2, it's steady, soaks into the hillside, turning sand into soup. By the 3rd night, it's pounding. I'm lying awake when I hear this deep, rolling growl, like thunder, but scarier. I grab a flashlight, run outside, see the ridge glowing under construction lights, and then the whole thing just moves. The earth sighs and slides. A wave of mud, sand, and debris pouring down, swallowing those cabins like they were nothing. The noise is like the world breaking open. When it's over, there's just silence. Karen's on the far side, shaking, screaming at the crew. They'd told her it was safe. The next morning, the whole place is crawling with investigators, county engineers, even the insurance company. I don't have to say much. The evidence speaks for itself. Hank's report, the fake soil studies, my photos. At the emergency board meeting, Karen tries to blame it on an act of God. I step forward. God didn't sign the permits. Karen, you did. The room freezes. Her board quits on the spot. By lunchtime, the county shuts the whole project down. By evening, the insurance company suspends their coverage, pending fraud. Karen, she calls it medical leave and tries to disappear, but news travels fast here. The woman who used to find people for mailbox paint just about buried the neighborhood in mud. And me? I didn't feel like celebrating. We lost 3 cabins. The valley scarred. But there was justice. And for the first time in a long while, the ridge was quiet. A week later, I stand at the edge of that slope. The air smells like pine and wet earth, everything washed clean. I run my hand over the ruined ground. Think about all that happened. Karen thought she could outsmart nature with paperwork and arrogance, but the land doesn't care about bylaws. That's what I'll remember. In the end, some things belong to the earth, no matter how many signatures you stack on top. So, what would you have done? Stood your ground, or let them take it? Drop a comment, because around here, the line between right and wrong's never as clear as it looks on a map. Let me back up a SEC, because you probably think the story ended right there. Ridge washed clean, Karen humiliated, and justice served on a muddy silver platter. But life around Chestnut Ridge isn't that simple. And sometimes, the quiet after the storm just means folks are gearing up for the next round. I figured after everything went down, I could finally breathe again. Take my coffee out to the porch. Listen to the creek. Maybe even find a little peace like Rachel used to want for me. But instead, I spent the next few weeks fielding questions from neighbors, news crews, and county inspectors, all while waiting for the other shoe to drop. Turns out, when an HOA president crashes and burns that hard, the ripple effects aren't just paperwork and angry town halls. The insurance investigation snowballed into a full-on county audit. They started digging, literally and figuratively, into every permit, every invoice, every improvement Karen pushed through during her reign. Folks who used to keep their heads down, people who'd never even glanced at their own property lines, suddenly started questioning everything. Some were angry, some were scared, and a handful even blamed me for bringing trouble down on the whole community. You know how it is, sometimes people shoot the messenger. But then, out of nowhere, a new face started popping up at meetings. Her name was Valerie Tran. Young, sharp, with a knack for getting folks to talk. She didn't act like the old board. She listened. She'd walk the neighborhood, notepad in hand, asking about the history of the land, the floods from years past, even stories about Rachel's wildflower garden down by the creek. At first, I didn't trust her. After Karen, who would? But Valerie didn't hide behind sunglasses or clipboards. She asked if she could see my survey maps, asked what I thought should happen to the ridge. And, she actually listened, which in Chestnut Ridge felt rarer than rain in August. Of course, not everyone wanted change. There were meetings that ran until midnight, arguments about liability and rebuilding, whether the cabins should be dug out or left as a memorial to bad decisions. That was my phrase, by the way. and it got me more than a few dirty looks. The insurance company tried to wriggle out of paying, the county threatened lawsuits, and for a minute there, it seemed like nobody would ever agree on anything again. But here's where the story twists. A group of young families, folks I barely knew, started showing up with rakes and shovels. They wanted to help restore the stream, clear debris, maybe even plant trees along the scarred slope. It wasn't organized, no HOA directives, no official permits, just people tired of waiting for permission, rolling up their sleeves, and doing the work. One Saturday morning, I came out to find a bunch of kids laughing as they splashed in the mud, trying to save the baby frogs stranded by the landslide. Their parents waved, some shy, some bold, a few just curious to meet the guy who stood up to Karen. For the first time in ages, the place felt like a real neighborhood again, not just a collection of property lines and rule books. Valerie saw it too. She started pushing for changes, revising the bylaws, capping board power, even setting up a committee for actual environmental stewardship instead of cosmetic nonsense. It wasn't easy. Some folks clung to the old way, arguing that rules are what keep us civilized. But enough people had seen what happens when you trust paperwork over common sense, so little by little, things shifted. The land started healing, slowly, stubbornly, the way nature always does. As for Karen, she never came back. Last I heard, she'd moved to a condo out by the lake, far from any hillsides she could try to tame. Sometimes, I wonder if she ever looks out her window and remembers the roar of that night, the way the land answered back. Me, I keep Rachel's wind chime hanging by the porch, the sound reminding me that respect isn't just for the earth, but for each other, too. Now, every time I walk the ridge, I think about how close we all came to losing more than a hillside. Maybe that's the lesson. Sometimes you fight for the land, but what you really save is the heart of the place you call home. So, what would you have done differently if it was your neighborhood? Go on, let me hear it. Because Chestnut Ridge, well, we've got plenty of stories left, and something tells me the next one's just waiting for the ring.